This mountain in Montana is unlike literally any other point on Earth. This is Triple Divide Peak. Now, if you're skeptical, then I don't blame you, because at first glance, Triple Divide Peak doesn't look like much. After all, with an elevation of only 8,025 feet, it isn't even close to being the highest point in Glacier National Park, let alone Montana or even the United States overall. But stick with me, as the height of the mountain isn't what makes it truly unique. Instead, what makes Triple Divide Peak distinct is the fact that it is the world's only hydrological apex. That's just a fancy way of saying that the summit of Triple Divide Peak is the only point on Earth where water can flow into three distinct oceans. Specifically, water that flows off the northern slopes of the mountain eventually drains into Hudson Bay, part of the Arctic Ocean. On the other hand, water that flows off the southeastern slopes of the mountain eventually drains into the Gulf of Mexico, part of the Atlantic Ocean, and water that flows off the southwestern slopes of the mountain eventually drains into the Pacific Ocean. But what is it about Triple Divide Peak specifically that makes it the only place on Earth where this phenomenon occurs? Well, it all has to do with the fact that the mountain sits at the junction of two major continental divides in North America: the Continental Divide, shown in red, and the Laurentian Divide, shown in green. But I can already hear the Canadians in my comments asking, what about Snow Dome? As you can see on the map, Snow Dome, which is an 11,550-foot peak located on the border of Alberta and British Columbia, also sits at the junction of two continental divides. As a result, water that falls at the summit of this mountain can drain either into the Arctic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, or, like Triple Divide Peak, the Hudson Bay. Because of this, you'll frequently hear arguments that Snow Dome and not Triple Divide Peak is actually the world's only hydrological apex. And that argument is based on how you classify Hudson Bay. You see, some sources consider the Hudson Bay to be part of the Arctic Ocean, while others consider it to be part of the Atlantic Ocean. This might seem like semantics, but it's actually important in determining which mountain is considered the true hydrological apex. If you consider the Hudson Bay to be part of the Arctic Ocean, then that means that Triple Divide Peak is the only point on Earth where water flows into three separate oceans. But if you consider Hudson Bay to be part of the Atlantic Ocean, then Snow Dome becomes the only place where water flows into three oceans. Now, this debate may never be officially settled, but one thing's for certain: only one of these peaks can hold the crown. Personally, as an American, I'm inclined to give that title to Triple Divide Peak, but let me know what you think in the comments and follow for more geography content.